Good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. Here I am again from the bunker here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're going to go through a different meter form today and talk about some different stuff today, which is going to be great. But I just want to go ahead and open up with prayer, and then we'll get rocking and rolling, okay? Precious Heavenly Father, you just go to the store now, and everybody's wearing masks, and it just seems so crazy. And we're looking for good news from our government, from our president. We have hope now of, will it end in a month? Will it end in 2 months? How long? And we have timelines in our head of when we'll have relief from this suffering and fear, and our schedule's disrupted. And Father, as your children, we're looking out a little bit farther than that, Lord. We're looking at eternity. We have put our faith in you in the midst of all of this during this pandemic, our country moving forward afterwards. And we just put it all on you, Father. And in this season right now, the next few days, this is why we're even able to come to you and the sacrifice that was made we're about to celebrate. So, Father, thank you so much for that, so that we can come to you humbly and asking for your help. And just we know that in your word it tells us that we are engraved in your hand. Not our names, but we are engraved in your hand. So we know you got us, Lord. We're literally in your hands. So I'd also like to lift up a prayer for one of our dear friends. They're part of our family, one of our reps. Kurt England's mother is having open heart surgery as we speak. So guide those surgeons, Lord, and give the family peace, because it's so disruptive they can't even be in there with her like he wants to be there with his mother. So, Father, all these things we say and ask according to the will of the one who paid it all, my brother, Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, so what are we going to do today? We are going to continue the series that we have been. We're going to talk about a 12S today. We're going to run some error scenarios on a 12S. The series is going to continue, like we said, into the future. We're not sure how far, but we know that next Tuesday we're going to be going over a 5S meter. And then on Thursday we're going to show you another new service that we're offering at Powermetrix. And we appreciate all the suggestions that are coming in. We've gotten some. They've been great. And we're going to institute those in the upcoming webinars. So thanks for those. You've asked for tests on specific meters and specific tests, or with specific probes, and we're going to do that. Okay, so we're looking forward to that. Thanks for those. If you have any, please send them in. So here's what we're going to go over today. We're going to connect the PowerMaster up so you can see where we make our connections with the probes and our voltage connections. You're going to verify the site accuracy under field conditions. We're going to overview some of the current probes like we talked about, because remember in the last one I showed you we have the flexes, we have the larger 752 clamp-on probes and the 353s that I'm using. So we have different probes available that we can use. We also are going to troubleshoot some error scenarios, some reverse phases, shorted voltage stators, also installing a 12S and 1S. You're going to see a lot of error scenarios that you can run on the benches, so we're going to do those as well. Here's the wiring diagram. You know, the first setup we've got is going to be a 12S with a 3-phase 3-wire network connection, and you can see by that we go on A and B phases, and we also make a neutral connection there. So let's get started today. You can see here's our 12S. We're all set up to do testing on it. I know there's going to be some folks who are going to be proud of me. I apologize for not being properly PP'd up before, but I am now. So we're going to look at some. So here we go. Let's talk about the connections on this. Well, and I guess I should say real quick, in case you weren't on any of the others, this is our self-contained bench. We have a self-contained and a transformer-rated bench. This is the self-contained. We started out with the transformer-rated. By the way, appreciate the flop in the everybody being okay with that and handling that. We were going to be on a 5S today, but you know, Jared had all his cameras and lights and everything set up right, so we didn't want to change that. So we stayed with the self-contained bench for this one. Okay, so we're going 5S on the next one. So this is our self-contained bench, as I said before. This one it's customizable per the utility. So in this one we had a 16S, 12S, 1S, 2S here, and then we also had to set up customer asked for the ability to be able to train with their probe well test kits. So we have a setup for that here. Okay. So in this case we're going to go, like we said today, we're going with the 12S. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the connections. You saw the diagram earlier. Let's see here. I'm gonna get in trouble already. Is it okay? Okay, I got lucky. Okay. All right, so let's make our connections on the 12S, okay? So first of all, we're going to make our voltage connections. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab on my neutral. You know that for safety's sake, we always grab on our neutral first, right? So I'm grabbing my neutral there, and then I'm on A and B phases, okay? So I'm going to connect red here, and I'm going to connect yellow here. For us, it's always red, yellow, blue, A, B, C. So we're going to go right here. Okay? And now we're going to use the 353s, and so don't forget and get in trouble. We've got, remember, I showed them last time, we got the 752s. These are rated 1,000 amps. We've also got flexes that are rated 3,000 amps. Depending on the number of conductors running in these self-contains, you know, you might be able to use one of these. But in this case, we've got a pretty small window in these 353s. But our wire capacity is enough so we can get in there, so it's fine. Okay? These all have arrows on them. Anything that measures current, we know has to be directional because current's directional. So we've got an arrow on here, and I know that my current is going up here into the top of the meter, right? So I'm going to face my arrow upward. So I'm going to go right here on A phase, and I'm going to go right here. Go right here on B phase. So I've got my voltage connections, I've got my current connections, and I've got my pickup. Okay? So, gotta start my test. There we go. Okay, so now you know that's what you should see for the vectors on the 12S network connections. Okay, so we look at that, all of our connections look good, nothing really squirrely or crazy on the vectors. So we're going to go ahead and okay, so we're going to go ahead and run the test now so that you can see the vectors, everything looks good, we know our connections are okay. I recommend a lot of times when you get into this that you do that. Take a look at things before you really get rolling with the test, okay? Take a look at your vectors, because you've heard it at the meter school a million times. If you see something crazy in the vectors, you might want to step back and take a look. It could be either something you haven't connected correctly, or there could be a problem there. And I always like to step back and, you know, I've told you this before, and we're going to really see this today. We're kind of like forensics guys, right? I mean, we see, okay, something shows me there's a problem. Now, what is the problem? So I have to use my head a little bit. I have to, you know the meter forms, and I have to use the equipment and look at the vectors and look at my connections and figure it out. Okay, so let's start into it. So we're going to go integrated site test. Okay, all of that looks okay. Hit next. The diagram we saw a moment ago. So I'm going to hit next. There are vectors again. So we looked at them earlier, so we know they're okay, so we can keep moving. So we're going to go ahead and hit continue. Now the test is going to look for a pulse. You guys heard it a million times, but I'm going to say it again. You wait when the big green ball lights up, you get the noise at the bottom, and then that means you can go ahead and hit start test. But you can't start it until you get a good pulse. Okay? And then I usually wait for a second pulse. I told you before, that's the way Ray Gore taught me, so that's the way I do it. Okay? Now for this, if it's going to be too long, I won't. But typically I wait for 2 because I don't want a nuisance pulse to throw me off. I'm going to throw a little sidebar. If you happen to move one of these, you're going to get a pulse. So if it gets hit or you move it or anything, you'll get a false pulse. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Ooh, this is what Jared hates. Dead time. Dead air time. So in this test, you'll notice at the bottom it was saying test in progress. I got 99.573. Okay? So I'm showing outside of what tests okay for this meter. So it's saying right now that I got that I'm outside of what I set for pass-fail on that meter. Okay? So we keep seeing pass, 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 pass. You guys need to see one that doesn't pass. So this is what it looks like at the bottom. You see it says test complete, possible error, please check connections. Okay? So if it's 99.573, evidently what we set, and when we come do the, whenever you buy a piece of test equipment, we always come do your on-site training for a day. When we set up that range of what was pass or fail, this is outside that range. And typically it shows up defaulted way with the equipment when it shows up new is going to be 0.2. So, and then you can change that. And when we're there doing the training with you, that's one of the things we do is we set the equipment up for you. So we ask you, what do you want to be your pass or fail? And you'll tell us 0.2. So then, like it showed up on there, I'll say, well, good, that's the way the equipment is now. It's showing anything 99.8 to 100.2 is a pass. But you might tell me, we want it 2%. Okay, everything from 98 to 102. And we'll set it up that way, and then from then on, it's pass or fail. Okay, so this one was set up so that when I got 99.573, that is outside of the range, so it didn't give me a pass. Okay? So we're going to hit next. So now Mr. Mullins is going to throw me some error scenarios. So, remember, he's controlling things. He is the admin, and he has his tablet over there, and he's able to change error scenarios, turn things on and off. If you heard it in the introduction of the bench, that everything is controlled by an admin. It also logs how many hours the trainee was on a piece of equipment, on that meter form. It's great for recording, for any kind of continuing education or any kind of training program you might have at the utility where you want to document everything. It'll show how long he's been on there. You can put comments on whether he was good on it or maybe he needs to come back and look at that one again and get more training on that one. You can set up pass or fails in there. I mean, so that it really is a classroom setting, and the administrator is controlling everything off of that tablet. Okay? So now we've gone to, we're going to stay here on the same form here, this 12S, and connected up network. So we're going to start. Okay. Okay, so it's started up now. So now we're going to test it again. We're going to leave everything just the same way it was. We're going to go into it again. So I'm going to do the same exact thing. I'm going to do an integrated site test. Okay, so we're going to start the test. Not doing anything different than we did last time. There's the same wiring diagram. And we should see our vectors. I know y'all have heard this a million times, either from me or at the meter school, whatever. So you can see what's going on phase A. If our vectors on the same phase, our voltage vector and our current vector are 180 degrees out, then we have polarity reversal on that phase, which is typically the result of wiring a CT backwards or wiring something backwards on the transformer rated stuff. And in this case, they've done the same thing. We are actually got polarity reversal on A phase here. So if you look at this, and I see polarity reversal on A phase, I know that's probably not going to be very good, right? Now here's where, on self-contains like this, if you think about it, if I get an issue like this, my watts are going to be so low in some cases, I can't even turn the meter, and you're going to sit out there for half an hour waiting to get a pulse. So what I'm going to do now is, when I see that right there, let's just do a quick check over here, and I'm going to hit my table button. Okay? And when I hit my table button, and look at that, what do I see for my watts over there? 13 watts. Okay? Because of that polarity reversal. You'll be able to sit out there, make a sandwich, and have a picnic waiting on a pulse. Okay? So at this point, you have determined that I don't have, I've got a reversal on A phase, and at this point, that's just me. There's no reason to try and test that meter because it'll take you forever. You won't, trying to get a pulse when I've got that low of watts. Okay? So what I would do at this point is I would log everything, okay, and log what you've got here. You've got polarity reversal on A phase. And then I would just get out of this because, like I said, you could be sitting out there forever. Okay, so at this point, I would just previous out. Okay? So that's the first curveball Mr. Mullins threw at me. So now we're ready for the next one. Everything the same network, right? So we're going network on this one. We're going, they're all connections. I'm not changing anything at all. I'm just going to wait and see what he's got in store for me. Hit the button, light comes on, so I know that can's hot, right? I mentioned it in the previous introductory one. We've got lights above these, so you know which can's hot. We also have up here letting you know that this station's hot. Okay? So we'll go ahead and do the exact same test. We're going to do an integrated site test, number 2. Still okay?
You're good.
All right, let's see here. All right, I'm going to go through, we've seen that. That's pretty squirrely looking. All right, let's look at what we got here. I've got nothing on A phase, right? I've got no voltage, and I've got no current on A phase. And B phase is jumping around a little bit. So what are y'all thinking? It looks to me like this is someone shorted my voltage on A phase, right? If they've shorted the voltage on A phase, the meter, you'll notice here, the meter's not powered up. Okay, so the meter's not powered up, and why is that? I can already hear a bunch of y'all yelling the answer over the internet. It's because most meters are set up to be powered off of A phase, right? That's what they use as their registration and reference. So if I don't have a voltage on A phase, I'm dead in the water. Now I will mention that Landis and Gear, some of their meters, they actually use C phase. So on a Landis and Gear meter, you might get a short on A phase voltage, and you would still be able to test, okay, because it's coming off of C phase, your power. But almost all the time, besides that, it's going to be A phase, so this leaves me dead in the water. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could sit there forever and try and test this one, but I think this is going to be another one. And remember, this is all between the kit, my knowledge, what I know, learning from things like this. That's when I recognize and I put it together, because that's more than just looking at a screen, right? And you've heard me say it before, the forensics thing. Think about that, what we just went through. I'm looking at that and I say, okay, I don't have any voltage on A phase, so then my knowledge, I say, wait a minute, I know that all these meters are powered and referenced off A phase. If I don't have any voltage on A phase, I should be done. And that's what's going on here. Okay, so this would be another one of those. I would probably log it and then just get out of it, because you're not going to be able to test it. Okay? So I'm going to previous out of this. All right, then we're back to the menu again. So now we're going to go with another curveball.
So this will need a little bit of explaining.
Yeah, we'll explain a little bit on this one, because I can see all the front of this. So looking at that 12S and that 1S can, there's not a whole lot of difference between those two cans, are there? I mean, just looking at these two cans, I mean, no. So it could happen that someone could take a 12S meter and put in a 1S socket. Okay? So if that happens, we're ready. Okay. So what would happen if that happens? The wiring in that socket is different for a 1S than a 12S, right? So let's try it. We're going to go integrated site test. Same thing we've been doing. Oh, wait a minute, I got vectors. So I have vectors that I'm measuring, but if you look, I got nothing, right? Because internally, okay, that wiring's not the same. Okay, out here where I'm reading, yeah, I'm reading out here and I'm reading, but in there is where the problem is because that's the wrong meter in that socket. Okay, so when that happens, the meter's not going to power up, and I'm not going to get anything here. So if I can look and see this, remember where I'm connected. I'm connected out here, so it almost make me zero in. The problem's got to be up in here somewhere, right? And then hopefully you're going to be looking and going, how come that meter isn't powered? Oh, and you will see that you have the wrong meter in that socket. Okay? Everybody good with that? All right, so I'm going to previous out of that. I'm going to go in here, and if I'm going to hit deselect site because I'm going to switch sites. And I'm going to select different site here. So now this is a delta. Okay, so this is going to be a 12S delta. So I set up two different sites. I set up one is the network and one is the delta site. So that's why I just changed. Okay, because obviously the information I've entered in for that meter site's different. So I went to the other meter site. So I'm here now. So I'm on this meter site, and this is a 12S delta. So now I'm going to have to move my connections, right? Because remember, on deltas we're always AC. God, Zoe. We're always AC, right? So now we're going to take B phase off here, and we're going to connect C phase up. Okay? So I'm going to take B phase off of here, and I'm going to take my B phase voltage off of here. I'm going to connect my C phase voltage here, and I'm going to connect my C phase current right here. Okay? So remember, on a delta, we're A and C. Okay? So I'm A and C voltage, A and C current. Okay? So let's go ahead and go back to our integrated site test, which I guess you guys have noticed if you tested transform rated sites, the integrated site test, there's a lot more to it. When we get to the self-contained stuff, it's just testing the meter, right? So we go here and we hit next, like we've been doing. And we're going to go next. Now the wiring diagram that's not in there yet is because we've changed up. This was for a particular customer, so we added this in there. So the wiring diagram is going to be on there very shortly, right, Chris? Okay, cool. So our vectors look okay. We always want to check the vectors out, so they look fine. That's what we should see. So we're going to hit continue. Wait for 2. I have a clock in my head like a quarterback in the NFL for dead time for Jarrett, and then I know I need to do something. He's giving me the thumbs up. He's a taskmaster, y'all. You just don't even know it. You just don't even know it. Between him and Mullins, I've got head of photography. No, it'd be, what would you be on a film set? You'd be head of...
Technical director.
I love it. I got technical director and then director. So, okay. So I've got, you can see here, it looks to be testing fine, 100.03. And we've got it set up, and remember we brought this up earlier, because I did not put a time in there on the customer load test, it's going to go through 3 pulses or 3 revs before it completes the test. If I had put 30 seconds or 3 revs, which is the way I run it out in the field when I'm out there, it's whichever it sees first. So if I have a low load on there and it's barely turning, I could maybe get 2 pulses in 30 seconds and it would complete the test. Okay? So in this case, it ran through all 3 pulses before it completed the test. Shows test complete at the bottom of the screen, and we got to 100.042, so we can live with that. So you guys have gotten to see if it falls outside of the range now, So you see that it gets a fail on it if it falls outside of the range. If it falls within the range, we get the pass at the bottom. But now you get to see what you'd see at the bottom of the screen if it didn't pass. You saw the red letters down at the bottom where it said you might want to check your connections in that. We wanted y'all to see that, okay? So this is a pass. Everything looks good on this. So I would hit done. And if we want to, and we've talked about this before, which I recommend before you disconnect everything, it's a lot, especially a transformer rated site, a lot more connections. So here I'm going to go to recall data, 6. And I'm going to go to my 12 delta. And I'm going to go down, it has today's date for the test session. And here's the actual test and date and timestamp on it as well. So here's the customer load test I ran on the delta. And it's there. Okay? So Chris is back there pointing at the probes, even though I already talked about them. I told y'all what I have to deal with. So anyway, let me mention them again. So you have different probes that you can use, right? As I mentioned before, you can use 353s, right, rated 200 amps. You can use the 752s, which are rated 1,000 amps. And then you can use our red flexes. They're rated 3,000. Now, these are obviously a little bit more difficult to get in a tight can, but if it's a bigger can like this, you're okay. But when you start getting into 2S's in that, and I was just talking with a guy that was testing, while I was driving yesterday, I was talking to a guy that was testing 2S's, and we were talking about these smaller clamps. He was using the flexes, and he's going to get a set of these now because it sure makes it a lot easier to get in those small cans. Okay? So, please send in any suggestions that you have for any meter forms you want to see tested, particular tests. We already have some we're going to be using after next week. We've gotten some requests for high voltage testing, for testing a particular a form in a particular test. So we're absolutely going to do that.
We already had a request for somebody wanting to see some scenarios for a 2S meter, so we'll put that on the schedule coming up next round.
Beautiful. Okay, someone asked to see some scenarios on a 2S, so those will definitely be in the next round. So this is what we're asking for. If you want to see something, send it in, and we'll work it in, okay? Hopefully this won't be going on too long, but we're going to keep doing these as long as we're in this situation, okay? So listen, everybody, if you can, get online. That's the way we have to go to church these days, so get online, go to church, and like I said, Easter, everybody go to church. Let's pray for our country, and I just appreciate you guys, man.